So, hello, good morning, hello, buenos días, buenos días. I'm going to paint this one. I had drawn it already. I had done these sort of color sketches of this image that I wanted to paint. So I'm going to paint it today. And the palette that I chose was actually the last one we tried out, which was the more sort of high chroma saturated one. I usually use like a Windsor yellow, which is like a lemon cadmium yellow. It's like right in between. I'm going to use this one today just to try it out. It's a Spanish painting, Spanish brand, and it's called the brand is called Titan, and it's called like Titan Yellow Medium, which is kind of dumb, but it's like kind of in between. It's like you can tell it's like between like a cadmium yellow and and a lemon yellow. So that's that yellow. Then it's a cad red medium, not too orange. Then like an alizarin, cobalt blue light, and raw umber. I always use raw umber just to have possibility to do more neutrals. So that's going to be the palette. So again, my titanium yellow, which I like, that has dryers, the Michael Hardman. We're going to give this a try. Where is it? The Titan yellow medium. It's stupid names. Cad red. This is actually what's this called? Permanent matter deep. It's kind of like an alizarin. It's the same thing. Cobalt blue and raw umber. So I started. I peeled off the saran wrap from my other palette. So, ¿qué son esas paletas? Tienen como un nylon arriba. Yeah, this is my palette has saran wrap. It's just an MDF with saran wrap. For these things, I just want to paint and then throw it out, or keep it for a few days and then throw it out, because I never clean my palette. The end of the session, because I have this set up in a tripod, but at the end of the session, I'm gonna show you guys what my what I use for a palette right now looks like, and I never clean it, and it's a piece of glass. But I never clean it. I have to scrape it like after months because I never quite clean it. So, anyways, so I'll get right to it. I'm going to try to answer questions, but I know I'm a mess when I paint because I start speaking about tons of other stuff. I'm going to try to tell you what I'm doing while I'm painting. So that's going to be, and I'm going to try to tell you what I'm mixing while I'm painting. So this is like a cooler background, and it's light, but I don't want it to be too light in my painting because I want the colors here to be kind of nice and rich. And even though her face, my daughter's face, is kind of in the shadows because it was weird lighting. This is a really strange lighting. She's going to be darker than this, but I kind of want her to be still the focus. We'll see how that goes, because she's actually surrounded by lighter colors. That could be quite nice, though. That this and this and this, and that's brighter too, that's more saturated, can be sort of lighter than her. And maybe she has like little spots on her face, which can be like bits of highlights. Well, that could be nice. So maybe I'll go for that. So I'm mixing like a cooler, and no medium again. I'm mixing like a cooler, cooler sort of. I want there to be some yellow in there, but I still need to be overly cool, so I'm using more of the umber and blue and just a little bit of yellow. And I think that kind of works out. This paper has already has some transparent acrylic medium on it. So for people that are super worried about that, it's already been primed. So don't sweat it. Like it's going to be fine. I'm going to have to cover it up a little bit, or maybe I can put like another clip here. Let me see. This is a mess of a setup right now because I don't have. This is actually I took it off of my sketchbook. I took it off, so I just have the page, just the ripped page, and I did it because if I want to keep painting, and the painting hasn't dried yet, I want to keep painting somewhere else, and I could have another sketchbook, but I'd much rather just take these off and then just kind of slip in my other sketchbook so I can keep them all in one place. So these are just variations of that mixture. So I kind of make like a base mixture in a way, and that's how I approach my color mixing. I make like a base mixture, and then I make like small hue variations within that mixture. I feel that that's like the best way to go, because I'm really sensitive, and I guess this is how I paint. I'm very, very sensitive to like small shifts in hue and very small shifts in temperature, but within like a broader mixture. So I'm usually more comfortable if I have like this puddle where I mix in, and I put something down, and then I say, well, I want to make it a little more yellow. So within that puddle, then I can grab my yellow and just put just this tiny shift there, and then I put it down. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the way I paint, and this is the way I was taught to paint. I guess inadvertently taught to paint, but because both my teachers, Max and Steve, they spoke about the value of making choices, but they went about it very differently. And I guess Max is a little more, with Max's paintings, Max Ginsberg, it's a little more evident in his painting, where he's very patient. You know, when you look at him paint, it looks like he's painting very, very slow, very, very slow, and suddenly everything just kind of takes shape, and you go like, wait, you were putting like, you know, these small, you know, these very specific choices, and you were taking your time with them, and it seemed like it was going to take you hours to just build up to a painting, and then suddenly, you know, out of nothing almost, the painting takes shape. And that's how he painted, and I was always amazed by it. I thought that was really incredible. So I usually grab something, like I said, for darks and lights. I'm probably going to go, there's a big dark red here, but I'm probably going to keep going with my with the brush that I have like lighter paint on. I usually just wipe my my brush to clean it up a little bit, but you know, I want to work within this sort of mixture of lightness, so I don't get like crazy colors over here. So this is more of a pinker color, but it's still very cool, still very, very cool. So I want to take that puddle I had and just make, you know, change, kind of keep the value a little bit and change the hues. So I want that pink, but I don't want it to be like a warm pink. I want it to be like a cooler pink. Let's see. So yeah, what I was saying with Max and Steve, they sort of pushed this idea that your choices should be singular. Like every time you go to your palette and you go to mix something, it should be this act that it revolves around trying to solve a very specific thing. And I used to think that that was very, very hard to do. And I still think that that's something that's very, very hard to do. That, for example, Max does better than I will ever be able to do. But that idea just kind of, I don't know, it just hung on, it just almost clinged onto my brain. And I was never able to like shake it. You know, it was crazy. I never liked it because it meant that I would have to paint. It would seem like this almost impossible degree of concentration for everything that I did, and I didn't like that. I always liked like more reactive painting, and I always seemed to tell myself, I would love to just be that sort of painter that expresses through paint. And I used to think that if I overly thought everything that I was doing while I was painting, then I wouldn't be able to express. I wouldn't be able to just react. And I don't know. It just right now it seems quite the opposite. So it feels like I am able to do it, and it has nothing to do with the patience or the time that you take with mixing inside your palette. So that was an amazing lesson that they both gave me. So I don't know if you can spot it, but there's a tiny little shift in value there. And again, I'm working within the same puddle. So it's very easy to control in a way, because I'm not gonna force that change in value, but I'm gonna work within the values that I had already pre-mixed in my puddle. So always go back to your palette. Every time you see something different, always go back to your palette, and don't go to your painting thinking, well, this is a very efficient brushstroke. Like, I can use this for so many places. And don't start dabbing your color in all the places where you find that it's going to be useful. Just use it for that particular moment that you were trying to solve and you went to your palette for. That is very, very good practice, I feel. So again, there's a tiny change in value there. And since there's kind of these accordion-like folds, that's going to be a little bit darker there, but just a tiny bit. I still want to keep it like a shape that's light. I'm going to try to finish early today because Liverpool is playing, so like in a couple of hours. So I have to. They're playing Newcastle, so I have to rush. I'm kidding. I'm going to try to do a good job with this, but if it coincides with me finishing up so I can watch the game, that is awesome. Hope you upload this. I've been uploading these. Yeah, people have been asking why I'm only uploading these to Instagram. Because if you're doing a live thing, like, I don't have a production like set up here. This is just my cell phone, and I'm recording what I'm doing. If I was producing this video, I would have to be recording it like elsewhere on my I don't know if you can do direct feed to, if you're doing a live Instagram, if you can do a direct feed to your computer so that you can record in your computer. I really don't know much about about those things. I do want to learn because that's exactly what I want to eventually do. But I know that people have been telling me, well, you should upload these to YouTube. But I do think that these are not, like, this is not the standard of video that I would like to put on YouTube if I wanted to do YouTube videos. If I was going to do that, I would do a much, much better job at doing this. In reality, I can only upload these to my history, to my stories. And if they're in my stories, they can only be kept there for, since they're about an hour long, they can only be kept there for a day, for like 24 hours. So for now, that's the deal. So if you're able to catch it, that's awesome. If not, there's going to be more, so don't worry about it. So again, this is my puddle, because this is like this big pillow that's behind her. I'm still going to keep this brush. Worst case scenario, you can use the screen capture thing for your phone. Yeah, I guess. But I'm going to eventually try to do it right, to produce like really nice videos. And like I said, like I told people, like if for some reason, because I'm learning that trying to do any crowdfunding endeavor from Colombia, is very, very hard. It's very, very hard. Like, these things are designed for like other countries. But if it doesn't work for whatever reason, like I'm gonna do a YouTube channel that, and I'm gonna start uploading videos and just growing the community that way. I wouldn't be able to do I wouldn't be able to print the books that I want to print, but if it comes to that, like, I'll gladly just start producing videos for that channel. I'll still have to, do everything else that I do. I'll still have to do like my paintings for like some gallery work, and I'll have to do my teaching, and I'll gladly do it because I love to do those things. But if it doesn't work out, then we'll make some videos and we'll start kind of building the community through YouTube. It's a little bit harder, to be honest, but if I have to do it that way, and if the Kickstarter doesn't work, not the Kickstarter, but the Patreon would be the same thing. It's just the problem is not it's not on your guys' side. Like, you guys could just say, well, just make a Patreon and we will send you money, basically. The problem is on my end, because I live in a country that has very, very strict laws that protect banks from money laundering, basically. So, which is, Colombia has historically a huge problem with money that comes from drugs. So there are very, very, very strict laws to prevent just money coming from overseas. And right now, crowdfunding is a fairly new thing. So there's no legislation. There's going to be this year some legislation here in Colombia that's going to try to create this this figure so that that money can come in, but there's nothing yet. So you guys could send me money to an account, but if I want to take that money and bring it to Colombia, it's a little more complicated than that. So it's very unfortunate, but I love Colombia, and I love living here, and I consider myself, I was born in the U.S. and I've lived in the U.S. I lived in New York for a while, but I am Colombian. So, and I love my country. So, but these are some of the things that that are just inherent to my country. So, right now, so I'm going to perfectly pivot into talking about painting again. Um, so right now I have a change. I have a very sort of drastic change, not drastic, but just a big change in value. So this is darker. So I have to make another puddle so that this lighter one won't affect the one that I'm working on now. And the lighter side of that curtain, because I'm painting a curtain. I mean, it looks like nothing right now, but it's a curtain. The lighter side of that curtain was cooler. The shadow side, the darker side, is warmer. But it's not crazy warm. So I'm still using some alizarin in there. But I started introducing some of that cadmium, that cad red. So whenever I see there's a significant shift, either in hue, so I don't know if sometimes people get super confused when you use certain words, but hue just means the color of the name. So these are, I have, well, yeah, you can call all of these hues, honestly, but so I have a yellow hue, a red hue, a blue hue. I guess that's more of a neutral, but earth tone. But so these are my hues. Hues are the names of colors. That's the easiest way to understand what a hue actually is. So if I see a significant change in hue, I'm gonna go to another area of my palette, and that's kind of what I did there. I noticed that I had to change the hue a little bit because this was a fairly kind of neutral puddle where the colors, all my primary colors, were canceling each other out a little bit. So I had to go to make another one which is fairly, warmer and going towards a red hue. So that's where that's where I tell myself I need to go to another area of my palette, to like a cleaner area of my palette. And if anything, I just wipe my brush clean and that's it. Creo que usa una tabla cubierta. Sí, para los que me preguntan de la paleta, es un MDF, o sea, es un pedacito de madera, cartón, lo que sea, y la cubro con papel de... ¿Cómo se llama el papel transparente? No sé. Sí, un papel de estos de transparente de cocina, papel de cocina. Y lo hago porque me da jartera como estar limpiando mi paleta, entonces después uso este por un tiempo, lo arranco y después vuelvo a poner otro en vez de limpiarla. Yo me aburro mucho limpiando, entonces como que es la manera de no tener que hacer eso. First person I saw doing this, like these brush strokes, was Schmidt in a video, and I loved him for it, because every time I thought the only way to produce a vertical stroke was just dragging your brush vertically, and Schmidt would do this with a flat brush. He would just go like the length of the brush and then do that. And it just made like a nice stroke. It just made for like a really kind of clean stroke. And you can still drag it. But if you drag it, you're also dragging the color that's underneath many times. So sometimes if you just have enough paint, you just kind of go like that. And it works really well for some reason. And I liked it, and I do it. I do both, but I remember the first time I saw it. I saw him doing that. I was like, oh my God, that's so amazing. And it's the stupidest thing in the world because it's a damn brushstroke. But anyways, that's yeah. And it's one of the things that I remember exactly when I saw it. So. Why don't you use medium? Because I talked about it. I talked about it a little bit the other day. I've been on this crusade with my own painting. I mean, everyone has their own, every single artist works on very, very particular things, depending on their history, their intention, what they want to get out of their painting. We're all very different. There's not one way to paint. It's ridiculous to think otherwise. And with me, I started noticing that I would have these little sort of mechanisms that I would use to try and make my paint more interesting, to try to make my painting look more interesting. And when I examined my paintings, I realized that they were very, very superficial. Like, these things I was doing were very, very superficial. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Superficial in the sense that I liked the effect of it. I liked the style. I mean, and literally I could say it was a style because, it's one of those things where one painter does it and then a lot of us start doing it afterwards just because we like how the painting looks like, what the paintings look like. And I started noticing that I was falling onto those little traps, and they are traps. They're very, very attractive traps, but they're still traps. And I said, well, let me strip my painting off of those seemingly very, very important things, and let me see what I actually own. Let me see what's mine, what's my own. And I noticed that, I can still paint, and I can still be very expressive with my paint, even if I take stuff that's seemingly attractive, that seemingly makes it more attractive while I paint. So one of the things that I took out was my solvent first, so I don't want to do like drippy painting, and then my medium. Solvent, like I never liked solvent because solvent does nothing for your painting. I mean, you can get those nice drips and everything, and that's kind of cool, but again, I started realizing that those are very, very valid, very, there's nothing wrong about using those ways of putting paint down. Like, don't get me wrong, if that's how you're painting right now, totally cool. That's, if it works for you, that's totally fine. But for me, it was more about emulating effects that I saw on other people's paintings, on what I deemed more successful paintings, and I just wanted to see if they could work within my painting. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the feeling of seeing these just manners of putting paint down that would condition my painting. So I have a theory on this, and it's very basic, but I think it's kind of I don't think I'm far from what happens with us sort of contemporary figurative painters. And it's for the longest times there were philosophies sort of stuck to paintings, to just ways of seeing the world through painting, and people were very vehement about defending those philosophies. So you even had like people making manifestos on different ways of painting. But nowadays there isn't. There's no movement. Nowadays there isn't. And people could say, well, you don't know that there's a movement, but there probably is, and it'll just take time and somebody looking at it from outside your time to see that there was actually some sort of movement. But there's no explicit movements in painting. But what we do have now is this liberty that painters feel, that they're not really, we're not obliged to work within any movement nowadays. So we could actually go like grocery shopping, as if like if painting was Whole Foods, we could go there and pick whatever we want. So we can actually today mix a Rothko with a Bouguereau, if that's what we wanted. Sounds ridiculous. It sounds insane, but we can. If that's something that would... I have to change my brush. I thought I could do like a clean stroke with this one, but I think I have to change it. But if that's what we wanted, to get back to my point, we can. And so you see a ton of people now saying through their paintings, I want to do a very sort of classical, a part of my painting I want to be very classical, very traditional, very naturalist. But then another part of my painting I want to be de Kooning. So nowadays we get like tons of painters just almost having or feeling the need to communicate like the whole of the history of painting through one painting. like this one painting exhibits like the whole of painting. Everything that has been done in painting is going to be said through this one painting. And I think it's not because we want to do that, I think that it's because we can do it. Because before you couldn't. It's like you would betray something. You would betray like a philosophy if you were doing something different. And again, right now it's just because we can. So right now, if we wanted a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of like 19th century naturalism with a little bit of Matisse, we feel like, hell yeah, we can do that. Those things are within the possibilities. So I think a lot of what painting is nowadays is just trying to juggle that liberty, the possibilities that liberty gives us. But I feel that, eventually that kind of wears down because, and this is my theory, and, when I give workshops I talk about this, but I feel that we're not quite aware that that we may have the right to pick anything we want. That's within the possibilities that we have. We may have them. We may have the right to pick them, but that doesn't mean that they gel. That doesn't mean that they can live together. And the reason I believe that they don't necessarily live together, they don't necessarily make great couples, is the fact that we don't realize that when we paint, when we choose something, we are sacrificing a lot of stuff. So the way I explain this to people is like, we have sliders that are like connected, and I'll give you like a very simple example, but hopefully it'll illustrate this well. Let's say you like detail. You look at a painting, and let's say you see Bouguereau, let's say, or David, and you say, wow, I love the way detail is handled in those paintings. Like, it's incredible. And you tell yourself, I want to be that precious with detail. So you make a mental note of what you interpret as something that is keen to your sensitivity, and you say, I love the great care that it's taken in describing those details, and the great sensibility that it's taken in describing those details. So you suddenly feel really, really cool because you've identified something that, is close to your sensibility again. But then suddenly you're walking through a museum or you're flipping through your books, and you look at Carrière, Eugène Carrière, the French painter that was friends with Rodin. So he does these incredibly atmospheric paintings. And, if you don't know Carrière's work, maybe Gwenjan, let's say. So you look at him or Gwenjan's work, which they're both really really, really cool. And you say, wow, that has atmosphere and just like this cohesion of tone. I want to do that too. So in your mind, you say, well, these things are different, but I have the liberty now to choose whatever I want. But what you're not realizing is that you can't have both of them at the same time. Like, there's no perfect painting that can blend those two together. And the reason is like super simple. Because if you want detail, if you want to have this ability to express detail and to stop and to showcase just this really high degree of observation in a little moment of a painting, you're probably sacrificing a little bit of atmosphere. I'm not saying that it's impossible to do both, but you can't. I don't think you can do both extremely well. Because, and for example, if you think about atmosphere, when you think of atmosphere, you think of an enveloping, this bigger thing that envelops form. And when it envelops form, it's like a soup. So it gets rid of detail. And you have to be very sort of selective about the detail you do choose to put in your painting. And many, many times you have to sacrifice detail for atmosphere. So it's kind of, I mean, this is a very, very simple example, but hopefully it's illustrating my point. So I think that people don't realize that if you pick something, you are sacrificing something else. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be. You can't just yearn for whatever you're sacrificing. You have to make a choice. You have to. So I really do believe, like, right now we're at a point where we realize, like, we can pick stuff, but we don't realize that it may not work. Like, those choices, again, while available to us, they may not work together. And we have to accept that. And we don't have to choose sides, but we have to realize that we may have to sacrifice something for something else. And it's our job to understand ourselves and to say, well, I want a little bit of this, but I don't want too much of that, because if I do too much of that, I'm sacrificing this other thing. So I think that's at least that's my theory on what goes on, and why, while we believe that we have these liberties, we are in many ways sort of mismanaging those liberties. So right now, I obviously had to pick like a very, very, very different area of my palette to do my mixing, because I have these darks that are significantly darker than any value that I've put down. And, I was trying to make those shifts in value very controlled while I was painting that, or just barely blocking in that little curtain back there. But it was funny, because in my mind I knew that it was still it was quite secondary. It's not going to be that important when you look at the whole of the painting at the end. But I still, like I said in my last video, like, I want to give it the respect it deserves, like those areas, just so that when I work on on other more relevant areas, relevant in the sense that they're important to what I want to say with them, not relevant because there's inherent relevance in painting a face, let's say. Then when I go to that face, then I'll know that everything else is kind of working for it. So that's good. I have a nice range of values there, because I have a lighter, I have some lights which are not, I can go lighter than that. I have midtones, which are a little more saturated, but not crazy saturated. And I have darks. I have my really nice kind of rich darks there. So I'm happy that I have those areas where I can establish enough of a difference between them that they can teach me how to sort of navigate the rest of the painting. Let me see a question. Could you make a little shadow review of your drawing? Shadow review? Do you plan that? I'm not sure what that means, a little shadow review. I'm not sure what that means. What would that be, like a shadow review? I'm sorry if I don't get it. Like maybe it's something that's really easy to understand, but I just don't. Maybe the term I don't get what a shadow review. Like something like to talk about my drawing while I'm painting, sort of. If I'm understanding that correctly, I just when I do drawings for paintings. Next painting, I promise that next painting I'm going to have no drawing here. And maybe I'll ask Danny to pose for me, and I'll work from life. And on Monday, I think Monday Danny can come here and she can pose. And if she's, we have to ask her if she can be nice enough to pose for a couple of hours. And you guys can see what is, and you guys can see how I usually go about painting from life without a drawing, like a pencil drawing like this one. And, I'm probably a lot bolder with the way I put my paint down. And I try to draw with my brushstrokes a lot more. I try to constantly draw with every decision I make with my brushstrokes. So maybe that's... maybe we can do that on Monday night. Monday night for me. For you guys, it would be like Monday, like 3 a.m. So for the people that are in Europe. Hasta luego. Encarna Moon. Bueno, chao, Encarna. Gracias. So I'm going for the darks of the hair, which are a lot richer, actually. The color, I'm using a lot more of the yellow, because I noticed that the color in there is a lot more saturated, like richer. So I want that richness in that shadow of the hair. So I'm using, again, kind of like my base dark, which is raw umber and cobalt blue, but I'm adding some yellow and alizarin just to make it kind of richer, like a deeper, richer color. Can I see your palette? I can't see the... yeah, sure. Is that better? For the hair. Yeah, I was just describing it. It's kind of like that base dark, that cobalt and raw umber, but I am adding the yellow and some of the alizarin to it to make it kind of nice and rich. So yeah, I'll ask Danny if she could pose for me on Monday, so we can do like a nice live painting, painting from life, so she can pose for a little bit, and I'll show you guys the approaches. I mean, the way I think is going to be the same. It's going to be exactly the same. I don't think any differently, but probably the approach is different. And it's going to be cool for you guys to see that while the approach may be different, and the result may be a little different, the way I think about the painting never changes. Never. The same fundamentals apply always, always, always. So that's the sort of dark, the shadow side of the hair. And let me see. Aesthetically pleasing. Oh, yeah, my daughter is aesthetically pleasing. Of course. She looks like her dad, so yeah, of course she is. Kidding. Now I gotta go for the lighter side of the hair, which is still a dark. You know, it's kind of like a mid-tone dark. So I have to start adding a little bit of white in there. Still has to behave like a dark value, though. More yellow and more umber, maybe. It's like a cooler color because there's a cooler kind of side lighting, like in that in the painting. So I have to try and get to that. Did you use that black straight from the tube? Did you mix it? No, I'm not using black. Not that I have any issues with black. Like when we did the color, when we did the possibilities of color, like exploring the different color palettes for this, I used a palette where I was using black, yellow ochre, and terra rosa, which is like an earth red. So I have no issues with working with black as a color. And I would have no issues to just putting it right there and then kind of seeing the possibilities of mixing, you know, that it would give me in terms of mixing it with my yellow, with my red, with my reds, with my blue. But for this particular painting, since I want like a higher chroma, I am sort of replacing that dark mixture with these three colors, with umber, raw umber, cobalt blue, and the alizarin. So it's not. I don't have any issues with black. People are very, very ignorant when they think that black shouldn't. It's not a great color to have in your palette, and the reasoning, and this kind of dates back to the sort of impressionist and post-impressionist. They used to say that, you know, it was in nature there was no. This was something that was actually said. They would say, well, there's no black in nature, and they were referring to there's, you know, that the idea of shadows, since they were looking at light, specifically like at sunlight, they sort of started believing that, you know, historically we've used so much black to speak about, you know, darkness and shadow. They equated shadow with darkness. Let's start with that. So because they equated shadow with darkness, they equated black with shadows. And because they equated black with shadows, they started saying, well, you know, shadows have, you know, hues in them. And they have like really beautiful, you know, changes in hue and changes in saturation within those shadows. So they started this almost like crusade against this color, this wonderful color that was used for centuries in painting, and I can't imagine ever, like I can't imagine a situation where Velázquez would say, or El Greco or any other like Baroque painter would say like, oh my God, I'm so limited by this black, you know. They saw it as a color, and they treated it as a color, and that's why they painted with it so much better than what we used to, because they didn't have this sort of post-impressionist color theory where black wouldn't belong in shadows. But that's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous in the sense that I've already spoken about, that colors can't have a sort of a use to them awarded to them preemptively. Like, you can't just say, well, I'm going to use, you can't just, I mean, kids are wonderful. I love kids' drawings. I think they're incredible. But we can't use color the way they they use color, like kindergartens, use color to evaluate like cognitive moments in your kid's development, in a children's development. And this is what I mean by it. Like, if you give your kid some colors, and if they paint the sky red, it's like, whoa, there's something, we have to look into this kid and see why the hell he's painting the sky, or he or she is painting the sky red. Or if he takes some blue and makes the trunk of the tree blue, they have to kind of look into why he or she is making those decisions. And I can understand that. That's like cognitive development in a kid, and that's one of the ways they use to evaluate how a kid perceives nature and how he or she interprets nature. But for us, we have to stop thinking, because like I made that mistake once. Like when my kid was in kindergarten, he drew this tree, the foliage. He colored it with a crayon red. So the teacher was like, trees are not really red, they're green. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Of course they're red. Have you seen, fall? Have you seen trees in fall? Like, and I told my kid, and he was like, he was like 4 or 3. And I was telling him, I told Samuel, you go back to your teacher and you tell her that, the color of the tree depends on the lighting that is hitting that tree, on the light that's hitting that tree. So you tell her that you can draw the tree, whatever damn way you feel like drawing the tree, because she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. And I told my sister this, and she's actually she actually teaches kids. She actually went to school for that. So I was telling her that, and she was like, you're an idiot. What the hell are you talking about? And I was like, well, that teacher's an idiot. She doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. Colors can, trees can be any color, any color they want. They can be blue. At night they feel like blue. So what the fuck does she know? And she was like, you idiot. When we ask those questions, it has nothing to do with your stupid color theories. It has to do with how your kid is perceiving nature. And I was like, oh fuck. So, but I remember me just having this color theory small talk with my 3-year-old, like telling him, you know what? Of course it can be. Of course you can paint your tree red, and just if you want to paint your water yellow, fuck yeah. If there's if the sun is hitting that river, and if the sky is kind of yellow and is reflecting that yellow sky, of course it can be yellow. And it's like, no, my sister was right. It's like, no, your kid thinks water is urine. What the hell are you talking about? So yeah. But nowadays, but now that we're adults, we have different ways to think about color, and we don't pick color because of an imposed inherent use. So when we go, we don't say, oh, I need to paint the sky, and you go shopping for a sky blue. That's the worst way. Like, it may work, but then you're missing the point. You're totally missing the point if you do that. So nowadays we realize that we paint relationships in color. That's what the whole centuries of painting has taught us, that we can paint relationships, color relationships. So we can make a color seem cooler, seem warmer, seem more saturated, depending on what we put right next to it. And so I'm not a big fan of people thinking, kind of going back again to the core of the conversation, which was the black, to people thinking that black has a use. The color black has an inherent use. That's what we presuppose. That's something that we think we know about the color black, about a black pigment. But the truth is, if we do that, we're very, very ignorant, and we are missing the whole point, and we are never going to be able to understand the true sort of range of that color if we only associate it with a use, with a specific use. So So that's where that sort of impressionistic and post-impressionistic theories failed, is that they gave colors uses. They presupposed emotions for certain colors, and that doesn't work. So now we can be far more objective. Nowadays we can be far more objective, and be very observant as to how a color behaves right next to the other colors that we put in our palette. And that's our responsibility as painters. It's one of the responsibilities that we have as painters. So I'm taking way too long on this hair for some reason, but I want that when I finally reach that head that I want to paint, I want it to be surrounded by something nice. So, and eventually I could go back into the hair, but es genial no solo ver tu trabajo cobrar vida, sino también es como estar conversando. Claro, no, pues es la idea. Siempre como yo me siento súper raro porque uno se siente hablando como con el aire, pero es muy bonito también entender que pues ustedes están allá afuera y que en realidad sí es una conversación y no soy yo como hablando aquí solo, que parezco loco. What brand of brushes do you recommend, Nicolás? Anything you can get your hands onto, but I would say that just have variation. Variation in the shapes of the brushes, in the size of the brushes, in the brush type. So if you have, if you favor natural hairs or synthetic, I was speaking about that in my last stream because it's I'm very respectful to people that don't want to use natural hair brushes. Like I said in my last stream, it is a practice that is slowly disappearing, and I am very respectful of laws being made and of brushes eventually sort of disappearing, of natural hair brushes eventually disappearing. It saddens me because they are they're incredible for what they're used for, but if we want to protect these little animals and we don't want to hunt them down so that we can make, in the same way that we people are against coats, mink coats, fur coats. I have to accept that this is exactly the same thing. So this is made from mongoose. So a little mongoose died so that I could have this brush. So if you're not cool with that, that's totally fine, and I respect you for it. And just know that worldwide there's laws that are making it harder and harder every single year, so that these brushes can be produced. So eventually we're going to have, somebody's going to have to invent these synthetic alternatives. In the same way that lead white is going to disappear. It's going to be a few years since for it to finally disappear, and it's going to be a shame also. And I know it's I totally understand that it's toxic. It's quite toxic. But if used responsibly, it just it makes incredible things when it's used by a painter. But in the same way, brushes are going to these very nice brushes are going to disappear, and we'll have to adjust, and that's totally cool. But if you don't want to use any natural hair brushes nowadays, there are a lot of alternatives, a lot of synthetic alternatives for you. They're not quite the same, obviously, and like I said, we're going to have to learn and adjust, but that's totally cool. So if you can only find synthetic brushes, like the one I used for, it's kind of dirty now, but like this one, it's totally cool. But if you want to buy bristle brushes, if you want to buy sable brushes, if you want to buy like these